do tonight is we're just going to have people come up and tell a story on the theme of spooky stories or the paranormal. And I don't have a story because I don't know what normal is. The line, it does not exist, so I can't tell you. But I know there's some really, really good stories in the room. And if you decide that you have something to add to our gathering, what I'd like you to do is there's a hat over there. Is just take the piece of paper, a little post-it there, and you can put your name and you put it in the hat. And when we're done with our featured tellers, we'll be pulling from the hat. So anybody who decides that they want to tell a story or they have something to add to our proceedings here, feel free. So our first teller, without any further ado, is a well-known performer, a musician, an actor, and now a director. Okay, directing a one-act over here is our very own Harold Hamilton.
My grandfather died on a Friday afternoon. He could have died on a Thursday. Could have died on a Saturday. He could have died on Wednesday. That was the last time he entered the hospital. The whole family was there. Over the years, we had all congregated around my grandfather at the hospital several times. He had had several heart attacks. He suffered from eczema, and later developed diabetes and lost both of his legs. And we had been through this many, many times, but this time was a little bit different. There was no life-sustaining respirator. There was no death-prolonging surgery. There was just an oxygen mask and a morphine drip. They were just sailing him out. We knew it was the last time. And we were all there for several days as he held on. And then Friday afternoon came along. Many people had been around his bed for several days, and at this point, a nurse came in and ushered us all out so they could clean him, go through certain procedures. And that's when everyone in the family just kind of started going back to their life. We were all on pause for a while, but my uncle had been neglecting his work, so he went to take care of some business. My aunts brought my grandmother to shower and change her clothes. My dad had been surviving off of cafeteria food at the hospital for 2 days, so he left just to get a decent cup of coffee. I was in school at the time, and I'd been neglecting my work, so I sat down and opened up my books. And at some point in there, the doctor came in to say that he had passed. My brother and I were there. We went into the room first. And he was gone. And at that point, I was like, okay, I need to call my father. And the cell service sucks in the hospital, by the way, so I had to leave. And this brings me to a little sidebar. The ICU in the hospital is on the 3rd floor. On the 2nd floor is the birthing center. I got on the elevator alone at the top floor, stopped at the 2nd floor, and entered 2 men, obviously a brand new dad and a brand new grandfather. So I kind of just took a moment to appreciate the balance of everything there. By the time I got outside to make the phone call, my family was already coming back in. They could tell by seeing me that it had happened. My grandmother went up into the room, gave my grandfather a kiss, and that was it. That was the finality of it. There was nothing else to wait for. And we knew we would spend the next couple of days planning his memorial. This is the point of the story where I want to reveal that my grandfather was my namesake. My name is Harold. It's H-A-R-R-A-L. H-A-R-R-A-L. No O's, no E's, no D's, no double L's. H-A-R-R-A-L. Hold on to that for a second. Well, the following morning, I wake up to a phone call from my good friend Peter, childhood friend, known him since we were 7 years old. Not surprising, but he calls me, and the phone call kind of went like this. Hello? Hey man, how you doing? I'm like, I'm all right, what's going on with you? Just checking in. Are you making sure I'm not dead? Yeah, pretty much. I explained to him that my grandfather had passed. And he said, yeah, my mom read something in the paper, so I thought I'd just check. To which I replied, surely Priscilla knows that I'm not an 80-year-old man. And then he told me what the paper had printed that Saturday morning. I don't want to trash any local paper, so I'm not going to tell you the name of the paper, but it was the Something Reformer. Okay, it comes in daily and a weekend edition, but I'll read that. Okay. This is what it read. It read, Harold Lawrence Hamilton of Putney died surrounded by his family, full obituary on Monday, failed to put the age of the deceased. Now, my name, my grandfather's name, is spelled Harral. I would say unique, but unique means one of a kind, so it's damn rare. So anybody who knows me knows that spelling and sees it there. And I thought, oh no. I walked through town with people screaming at me, taking double takes. I walked into McNeil's and the bartender said, dead man walking. I got a message on my answering machine that said, hey, Harold, can you call me? Can you call me? It was a beautiful, I was basking in the Tom Sawyer-esque nature of it all. It was a beautiful thing. Then Monday came around. They printed a full obituary about a man who was 80 years old and who had fought in World War II and had raised all these children that I call aunts and uncles. And everything was back to normal. And I was alive again. And I guess my only point of the story is that if you're going to die on a Friday afternoon, do it before press time.
Thank you, Harral, Harral. It's like a palindrome, but not quite. So good. That was 5.5 minutes if anybody's trying to figure out their story. A great story. We really enjoyed it. And I'd like to now welcome our next teller, who is also kind of in touch with the other world. And her name is Mary Collins. And please tell us about your experiences with the hereafter.
Right there. So I want to talk to you about the other realm, the other side, the great beyond. And in order for me to tell you that story, I need to tell you a little bit about myself and about my parents, who actually gave me some lessons from the other side. And in order for me to tell you that, I need to tell you a little bit about who they are. But before we get going, I have learned a few things that I want you to keep in mind if you're going to talk to the other side. One is that you need to invite or ask. 2, you need to notice. And 3, you need to acknowledge and show gratitude. So let me tell you about my parents, Diana and Ed. They were only married for about 8 years, didn't really have much in common. In fact, they had so much that weren't in common that's why they were only married for 8 years. My father he followed rules. He was a military man. He was in the Army. So I was born a military Army brat. The first thing we did when I was born was move to Germany for 3 years, where we lived. And when we came back, our house was filled with German culture. In fact, people thought we were German. We weren't. We were Scottish, but I knew nothing about Scotland. I knew everything about Germany. We had cuckoo clocks. We had steins. We had fabric. I wore lederhosen that my brother had. I mean, we were really steeped in this culture, and cuckoo clocks were one of my father's favorite things. In fact, he would spend hours showing me how to pull the chains, if you've ever seen them, with the giant pine cones. And he was obsessed with it. And he also spoke German. Now, I don't know how well he spoke German, because when he spoke to a German person, they usually looked at him with a little question, but he was very, very proud of his German. But because of the way he behaved in many ways, I was embarrassed by him. So I told these stories about my dad that were not very flattering. They were a little unkind. So fast forward, he's long gone. I'm studying mediumship. I've gone to the Omega Institute, and I'm spending 5 days learning how to talk to the dead. And it's my last day, and I'm receiving information. Now, the woman on the other side says to me, I'm with somebody. Of course, she's practicing too. She's not a full-fledged medium yet. I'm with somebody, and they're speaking another language. Is there anybody in your life that spoke another language? No. Well, could it be German? I think I'm hearing German. The light bulb. My dad. Oh, it's your dad. He's here. Wow, he's got a message. It's not a usual message that I hear. He's saying, could you be a little less, could you be kinder? Could you tell nicer stories? You know, he's only human. He was only human. Cut him a break. So I say, of course, oh my gosh, I'm realizing, wow, the only stories I tell are not really very flattering, and I'm really sorry, Dad, of course. So it's the end of this is the major message I get from my dad. I go home, and I'm walking up the stairs to my house, and I see an object on the porch. I'm like, what is that? I get closer and closer, and lo and behold, what is it? A cuckoo clock. There is a cuckoo clock on my porch. And I get a little closer, and I look at this note, and it says, Mary and Chuck, I thought you'd like this cuckoo clock. Love, Ed. My dad's name. How can my dad do this? It's clearly from my dad, but we have a friend, Ed. It came to him when he was looking at the cuckoo clock. Who would want this cuckoo clock but Mary? So I think of that as a gift from my father, a peace offering, saying it's okay, you understand now, do not speak ill of the dead. Lesson number 1. My mother, Diana, a rule breaker, the biggest rule breaker I know. In fact, she did things that were unlawful. She sold pot. She was one of the first women's lady, right? So it's 1970s. She's taking out a sheet. She's throwing out bags of marijuana, and I'm helping her scale it in little baggies. I'm about 9. So my mother was a rule breaker. She didn't follow the rules, and but she also shared with me reincarnation thoughts and stuff, and she introduced me to this man, this Dr. Brian Weiss, who's the guru of past life regressions. So when she was dying, I said to her, Mom, you gotta tell me what it's like on the other side. And she said, of course I will. The night she died, she comes to me in a dream. And she looks at me, she's gorgeous. She looks at me and I say, oh, thank you so much for coming. So what's it like? And she has that expression she had for every story she ever told me, which usually started with, you're not gonna believe this. And I said, yeah? There are a lot of rules. I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it. I guess we'll all find out.
Comments and chants from the other side. That was amazing. Wow, I hope I sometime get contacted by my parents too. That would be very heartwarming. Unfortunately, that's never happened. And but I do have a short story of the unexplained, something totally inexplicable that happened when I was a child. So when I was a child, I lived in a very, the middle of Brooklyn, the heart of Brooklyn, and I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, who was a primary caretaker for me. And she had a very small track that she would go. She would go hang out at the butcher, and she would go hang out at the tailor store, and then she would shop at the grocery store. And that was about the 3 things that we ever did. But she would do alterations at the tailor shop. Now, this is already probably 1970 or something like that, so just hear me out. We are there. I'm playing with buttons and bobbins and whatnot, and just trying to stay out of trouble. And she's doing some alterations, and a man walks into the tailor shop, and he is completely dressed in an outfit from the 1920s. He's wearing a soft cap, he's wearing a vest, he's wearing pants that are pleated and wool, his shoes look weird, he's got a watch fob. I'm looking at him like it's Jules Verne. Who is this guy? And he comes in and he asks the tailor in very clear diction if he could make him a suit of clothes, that he needed to update his wardrobe. And the tailor said to me, we don't actually make people clothes anymore, that's a different kind of tailor. We're basically a dry cleaning shop, so I'm sorry, we can't help you. And the guy looked very confused, and he walked out the door. And I looked after him, and I saw him walking up the street just downtrodden, like he didn't know what he was going to do. And this is the time when Candid Camera was huge on TV. And if you don't know what that is, it's a show that played pranks on people and filmed them to see their reactions. And I was looking for their truck. I was like, this has got to be Candid Camera, because it looked like that fellow just fell out of time and showed up in our shop. And I never saw him again. And that is just inexplicable to me. It was like he just fell through time and ended up in our tailor store. And I've never had anything weirder than had that happen to me. Anyway, thank you. And our next teller is going to be Cindy. Thank you, Cindy Kane Fitzgerald, who's got a lovely story of I won't be able to say it right, but she will. So come on, Cindy. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to remind you that I told you at the beginning that this was 8 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
We are good.
All right. So, growing up, I was afraid, terrified of 3 things: vampires, snakes, and La Llorona. Vampires I could handle. I had this tried and true method of protecting myself by wrapping my polyester blanket around my neck. I figured that would just send them looking for easier pickings, like my little sister across the hall. Snakes, I could just watch out for. La Llorona was another story. If you don't know her, La Llorona is the Wailing Woman. Her story can be traced back over 4 centuries, and it differs depending on who's doing the telling, but there are some constants. She was a great beauty, and not always, but often named Maria, and she married and had relationships with a man above her station. She suffers a great betrayal. Her children die a tragic death, either at her own hand or by her neglect. She wanders aimlessly, snatching up children. Some say to drown them like she did her own. Others say to replace the children that she lost, and she prefers to do her wandering near water. I know, I don't look like somebody who grew up steeped in Latin American mythology, but looks can be deceiving. I grew up in the Central Valley of California. The San Joaquin Valley is almost 400 miles long, a little over 250 miles wide, and flat. Think Vermont and New Hampshire combined together, but a little bit bigger and flat. I mean, as far as the eye can see, flat. You got the Sierra Nevadas to the east, you've got the coastal mountain range to the west, and right in the middle, a lush agricultural valley with a 12-month growing season. This was my childhood stomping ground. Pinedale sits just at the edge of Fresno and Clovis counties. Today, it is littered with McMansions and mini malls, but when I grew up, there were small clusters of small houses surrounded by grove after grove, with row after row of trees growing every fruit and nut you can imagine. And my neighborhood was peopled with the folks that picked and had processed those peaches and olives and almonds and pecans and raisins and plums and prunes. They were descendants of migrant workers who settled into homes that were made affordable by a thriving middle class. Hawaiian, Australian, German, Italian, Japanese, Mexican, and Okie. We had our own little melting pot right there on Birch Street, and us kids ran those streets ragged. Barefoot, shirtless, we raced around the neighborhood chasing daylight, the lucky of us on bikes. One end of our street was the exit to the rest of the world. At the other end of the street was a vast, empty, undeveloped field. Acres and acres of undeveloped land. And that field was full of danger. Snakes, for one. But also ankle-twisting divots and broken glass. And always during the dog days of August, the threat of fire was imminent. The field was full of danger, and therefore, according to all the neighborhood mamas, off limits, which meant, of course, it was our favorite place to play. Underneath the fields were hidden bunkers from World War II. The doors had been removed, but inside you could still find treasures like rusty cots and moldy pinup pictures and empty beer bottles, and once, a bullet. We'd hunker in the bunker with stolen cigarettes and snacks, our own subterranean clubhouse where we shared food and folklore. Alberto and Fernando could be counted on for corn tortillas made by their mom, Tomasa. Mitra had a pomegranate tree in her front yard, and Marianne's mom, Hideko, made these amazing, sweet, salty rice balls. My mom could always be counted on for a couple of Pepsis. So we shared stories along with our snacks, and we loved to scare the snot out of each other. So it's a foggy fall afternoon. The smoky white two-leaf fog is thick as soup, except at ground level where it weaves in wisps. If you don't know about two-leaf fog, it is a genuine weather event. We didn't have snow days out there like you do out here. We had foggy day schedules. This is when the buses were slowed and not allowed to run until it was safe enough for the buses to be driven. Two-leaf fog is so dense from the knees up that visibility can sometimes be limited to at maybe a foot or two in front of your hand. Literally, can't see your hand in front of your face kind of thickness of the fog. From the knees down, it's wispy. And as you walk through it, it leaves traces, very eerie, sort of reminiscent of those noir films where you just see the wisps of fog where somebody used to be. Scary. So, back to the fog-filled afternoon. The fog was so thick that you couldn't see more than a foot or two in front of you. We left ghostly traces in our wake as we headed out to our bunker. Berto and Nander's big sister, Jeannie, was with us at this time. And Jeannie was she was older than us, and she did nothing, hang out with us. So we were full of bravado. We were loud, we were boisterous, we were not scared of nothing. And then Jeannie says, real quiet, you know, La Llorona likes the fog too. And everybody shut up real fast. See, La Llorona was the one that would get you if you didn't fall in line. Parents used La Llorona to scare their children into obedience. Kids used La Llorona to scare other kids. Kids like us. And kids were who La Llorona went after. Kids like us. Kids with a bent to break the rules. So there we are, sitting in our bunker, smoking stolen cigarettes. breaking all the rules and bragging in our bravado. And Jeannie reminds us that this is La Llorona weather. And it slowly sinks in that there's a quarter-mile of two-leaf fog-filled field that we have to cross to get back home safely. I'm not sure I ever really believed in the La Llorona until that moment. I mean, I'd heard her story 100 times, but I don't think I'd ever really believed until right then. And as Janie was telling this story about her cousin's friend's cousin who heard about somebody who saw La Llorona in the fog down by the San Joaquin River, which is only about a half a mile from where our Bronco was located, we got even more scared. And we decided that it was time for us to head back home to safety. As I said, there was a quarter-mile of two-leaf-filled fog. Two-leaf fog-filled field. Wow, that's hard to say. Between us and safety. And I was scared because not only was La Llorona out there, but there were also snakes. How was I supposed to keep my eyes out for La Llorona and the snakes at the same time? We decided to walk back through the field in single file, soldier-like. Berta was out front, Jeannie was holding my hand, and Jeff was somewhere in the back. Did I mention that Jeff was a jerk? Yeah. So the two-leaf fog had created enough false sightings of La Llorona that our hearts were already racing when suddenly we heard these squishy footsteps and the sound of something being dragged through the field. And then we heard a moan. And then we heard a yell. And then we heard, no! And in the sudden quiet, we see Jeff scuttling up over the top of one of the bunker mounds. And he's holding something in his hand. And he says, hey, Cindy, La Llorona is scared of snakes too. And we look and we see that he's actually holding a snake in his hand, like a lasso. And he swings it, and he lets go, and the snake flies, and it hits me in my leg, and it slithers down my shin, over my shoe, and off into the field. And it was only little, and it wasn't a rattlesnake, but I didn't know that at the time, and all of my fear left me in my rage as I barreled into Jeff with both fists, because nobody, and I mean nobody, throws a snake at me and gets away with it. And the fight was short-lived because it mostly consisted of Jeff, who was much bigger, holding at me at bay and laughing at me, and Janie telling Jeff what a jerk he is. Excuse me. Suddenly the fog lifts, and I can look in the distance, and I can see the green porch of 1155 West Birch Street, and I know that I am almost home, and I know that on this day I survived both La Llorona and snakes, and a little bit of bravado sinks back into my bones. But that night, I still slept with a blanket wrapped around my neck because, I take chances.
Thank you very much. That's Cindy Kane Fitzgerald and La Llorona. That's it, right?
La Llorona.
Very good. What a great story. So normally we ask people if they decided to tell a story or something came to them to put their name on a piece of paper and drop it in the hat. So I only have one name in the hat right now. I think. Let me check. So this is, yep. Okay. I've only got one name in the hat, and I don't think that she is here right now. So I'm going to introduce the last featured teller that we have for the evening, who is my son, Alex Lockie. And before I do that, I just want to invite people to tell your friends about this so that we can, share the joy, because this has been a joy so far, and how great to get to know people. and to really listen. You know, it's so rare in regular life that you tell a story and anybody's actually really listening. So thank you all for being really listening. And yeah, without further ado, here's my son Alex to tell a true life ghost story.
Hello, thank you. All right, I'm doing the show as Electric Bill. I have a radio show, WVW, 9 p.m. tonight, Electric Bill's Power Hour. But this is a story I told on the show, and it's something I'll tell you guys about tonight. So like a lot of the other stories, great stories, growing up, I was like deathly scared of a couple things, you know, vampires, spiders or something, until one day when I was living in a really terrible old like vacant house in a strip of Section 8 housing in Atlanta, spider infested, lousy place. And especially I was scared of the Black Widow, like it kept me up at night. And this place had them everywhere. One morning, I wake up, and there's a dead Black Widow spider on my pillow in the bed. But I realized then, look, if I killed this with my face while I was asleep, it's not as big and bad of a threat that I thought it was. Anyway, this story is actually about another time in Atlanta, in a little neighborhood called Kirkland, which is super cute, near Decatur, all these Civil War plaques everywhere. This is somewhere that Sherman burnt to the ground on his big march. And I get this beautiful 1920s cute bungalow with my girlfriend at the time, Sydney. Everything was looking up, things were going great, and all I was scared of at that point was having to pay the rent. Sydney wasn't scared of that. She had a big old Southern family with a great, like, Southern Gothic interior design sensibility, big wingbacks with the claw foot, you know, plush buttons, all kinds of scrolly, fiddly things that I had no idea about. I just let them kind of go nuts. I was working at a sandwich line, a line cook at a cafe around the corner, and I was begging them for more shifts at $8 an hour. That's what it was like back then. It's hard to think of that, but anyway, so there was something off about that place. I didn't know what it was, but Sydney was scared. She thought for sure it was haunted. There was a weird basement with like one hanging light bulb and a broken toilet, you know, so that looked scary. And then, you know, every creak and crack, she sent me to go investigate. And then, you know, one night I got work early in the morning. She says, hey, my friend Megan's coming over. Megan's kind of a screwball, but, you know, whatever. Don't be loud, don't be late. I got work early tomorrow. So I go to bed. And in the middle of the night, I sit up and there's like this pale blue moonlight going through all those lacy white curtains all over the house. And the doors never stayed shut in that place. You know, they'd like kind of swing open after a while. And I sit up in bed. From my bed, I can see in the hallway. In the hallway, there's this mirror. The mirror looks into the living room over here. The whole rest of my house, basically. I'm looking in the mirror, and I see Megan, and like something weird is happening. I have a strange sensation. I see her laying there, and is there someone with her? I look, and I look, and it looks like there's a guy sitting next to her on the couch with his arm up like this. It's exactly what you would be doing if you're there. The TV was right there. That's what a guy would be doing, most likely. I was pissed. This girl was kind of crazy. I'd been like wanting to set her straight. I didn't like people messing around in my house. I was like almost looking for a reason to go over there and be like, you know, what? She's having a guy over when we were like just trying to be nice and let her crash on a quiet night and stuff. So I like wanted to go out there and yell at Megan and set him straight and put to bed all this stuff. Like, this is my place. I'm paying rent. If you're not, you're out of here. Or don't tell me what. And but then I like stop. I like keep looking. Like something like turns in me, and I'm like, this guy is not there. They're being still. Something had woke me up a couple seconds ago, but I can't really see in the fuzzy reflection in the dim light. And eventually I reasoned that it just kind of, like the light in the curtain looked like a male hairline, like projected on the wall above the couch. For some reason I just like, whatever, nothing's going on out there. Go to bed, think nothing of it. In the morning, walk right past, nothing strange about it. Go to work hard, steal some food. And then, you know, I come back, Sydney's outside smoking, and, you know, I say, how's it going? She says this and that, you know, we're talking for a while, and then I'm like, so we get around to Megan, I'm like, oh, when did Megan leave? And she's like, Megan left pretty late. She's like, when? She's like, oh, like 1 or 2. And I was like, oh, why so late? And Sydney's like, she couldn't sleep. Why not? She just kept waking up. She said she had a dream where a man was above her, shaking her shoulders and saying her name all night. So what you just heard is a true, in the wild, double-blind, confirmed sighting of the phantasm itself. I wasn't looking for it or whatever. It stood out to me. And overall, though, you know, humans rule. The ghosts can't do anything. You know, they want to be like us. They can't. It's my house. They turn to dust when you walk past. They can't stand up to our light. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, does anybody else want to tell a story? Anybody else got been inspired by our ghostly proceedings?
All right, I'll tell one.
Yes! Great. Okay. Brandy. All right. Thank you, Brandy.
No, you guys, I love spooky stuff, okay? I actually didn't realize that today's storytelling was like a spooky theme. I just knew about Harold's story and that it sounded spooky, but I didn't realize that everything was related to this. So I should give a little bit of a trigger warning for my story. It has a little bit of a mention of suicide in it. So if anyone is going to be really bothered by that, if you can let me know or go somewhere. You guys okay? Okay. It's going to be a little bit different of a story too. And I've never told this story like this or anything before. This is very not normal for me to be out here doing this. So I have never been good with death. The first dead person that I ever saw was my grandmother in her casket. And I was 14, and I leaned down to give her a kiss. And I'll never forget my aunt scolding me and telling me that I was liable to get salmonella. Still don't really know if that's a thing or not, but that was my first experience with death. And fast forward just a little bit to my next run-in. Also around the same age, maybe 15 at this point. It was very close together. I was visiting my mother in her apartment, and just like Harold didn't want to give away any specific places or, newspaper companies, I don't want to give away any specific apartment buildings, but this one was on Canal Street next to a store named Moosier's. And yeah, so I was a curious 15-year-old that saw caution tape, and I just decided to check it out. And all the adults in my life thought it was a great idea too, and said, hey, yeah, you can be our eyes and ears. Tell us what's going on next door. So I turned the corner I leave my mom's apartment and I walked around the back porch and immediately saw something like that a little bit, and immediately just turned and ran back into my mom's apartment, and my throat closed up, and I just tried to tell her without being able to speak because my tongue was literally frozen. But I put my hands around my throat and I just said, "E, bang, ing." And that's what I said, and eventually I think she got the point, and she was very disturbed, and so was everyone else. So that was my second kind of experience with that, and these experiences kind of paint you and your the way that you go about your life in the future. And ever since that moment, I'm really cautious when I open doors for some reason. And I don't like to be enclosed in spaces. I have a little bit of claustrophobia that began to develop. So fast forward, again, many years later, at this point I am probably about 20. I'm working as a housekeeper in a hospital in Massachusetts, where I was living at the time. And part of that job involved going in elevators, going up and down with a cart of cleaning supplies. Had never really had too much of a problem with elevators at that point, but definitely was, I was cautious in them. Also, was new to just the hospital scene in general and things that go on in hospitals. So I get in the elevator one day to go upstairs to clean a room. And it's just me and two other people, one of which was a patient, who was, preparing for something on a rolling cart. And I looked over at the person that was pushing this patient, and I said, "Wow, he's taking a nap, huh?" And then the guy looked at me and said, "Yeah, we're heading down to the morgue. He's gone." And it just occurred to me after the interaction, after the gentleman rolled the gurney with the patient, the past patient on it, out of the elevator that I was in with the elevator closed, that this man was dead. And I hadn't even really noticed that he was in a body bag that was fully zipped and I could not see his face. So I knew he was taking a nap all right. And how weird that guy must have thought I was. So next day, I've got to go back in that elevator. I got in the elevator, it was just me. The doors closed. My heart is racing so fast. I wasn't thinking about the interaction I had the day before, but my body sure was. And my heart was racing so fast, and I'm just thinking, okay, just get to the next floor. But this elevator is going nowhere. And that was when all these thoughts started running through my mind of, oh my gosh, elevators get stuck, and this is an old hospital. These are old elevators. Oh my gosh. And so I don't even know what to do. I'm freezing. So then I just start dinging the bell. That bell where you're supposed to ring it, and then people are supposed to hear it, and then they send you help, and they're like, It's okay. We're coming to get you. So I'm dinging it and I'm like, ding, 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 help. And I hear people on the other side. And they're like, are you okay? What's going on in there? And I'm still dinging it. And then they press the button on the outside to open the doors and notice that I hadn't pressed any buttons.
That's exactly what we hope for, is to get somebody new on mic who hasn't told the story yet, and now you're hooked, right? You'll come back, because that is what we want to hear. It's just stuff we haven't heard before. And is there anybody else who hasn't told a story? Or someone who has told a story who wants to tell something else came to mind? No? Okay. I have one last story, which I don't know if it's true, and I may need to get fact checked on this, and thank goodness I have someone here who can fact check me on this story. This is a story of the supernatural. My son Alex broke his arm. He broke it really not that badly, but it got infected, and it got infected very, very badly. And when he was going for physical therapy, he had a big bubble that was coming up on his arm, and the physical therapist didn't refer us until it was way too late to have it looked at by a doctor. And he had a very, very bad infection. And it took several surgeries to clear out that infection. And they sent us home with an intravenous antibiotic drip that he had to be on. And it was touch and go. It was one of the most horrifying experiences that we as a family have ever been through, because, you know, you can die that way. And he was very young. And he was going in for maybe his 4th operation to clean out that arm. And we were getting prepared as a family. And I said, we have to try something that we haven't done before, because we've done all this before and it's not working. I said, we're going to get together as a family and we're going to pray over this arm. And it's awkward, okay? Because I'm on the holy roller in my family at this point, let's just say. I'm the only churchgoer, the only believer. But I get him around this boy's arm, and we prayed over his arm. And I asked God to help him and clean his arm. And the next day, when he went in for surgery, they opened it up, and it was clean.
Nice.
So I do believe in a higher power. Anyway, thank you very much.